Shitsurei, it's Kamimashita, and welcome back to the podcast where we take a deep dive behind all of your favorite creators and people in the anime community. Last time I had Shapes, this time I have Kor. Hi, Kor.
Hi. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. So Kor, I love Kor. Kor was one of the first anitubers that actually reached out to me, him in hiding, and just kind of, became friends and have fun together. So Kor, for people that don't know you, could you please just give a quick overview of who you are and what your channel's about?
So I'm Kor, just Kor, K-O-R. I used to be known as Kor Reviews, but I dropped that moniker after I felt it was a little too limiting to my image. But I mainly produce videos about anime, analytical videos, but they vary quite broadly in subject and in style. I do everything from musical analysis to, theme and characters, or even doing things like taking looks at newer anime and even older anime. I like to try and mix things up and not have any video be, quite the same as the last one.
So you mentioned before that you used to be Kor Reviews and now you're just Kor. When you first made your channel, why exactly did you make Kor Reviews? Was it because I know back then AnyTube had this image of being more review focused? You had people like Arcada and Glass Reflection, but really everyone was kind of doing this review format rather than analytical. Was that part of the reason?
Yeah. It was very, I recognize now it was a big mistake, and it was a large part of the reason that for a very long time I was making anime videos. I started doing them, I think, late 2014. I started making videos. My first anime video, scripted anime video, I believe was a review on Makaku City Actors, shortly after it had finished airing. And I very much, when I got into anime, I was super immediately thrust myself into the sort of culture. As for me, when I find an interest that I really connect with, I tend to get really invested in the entire community and the culture on sort of every level that I can. And so I started watching a lot of the channels that were doing videos, and a big sort of influence, and what got me watching the shows I watched to begin with was channels like Digibro and Arcada, Glass Reflection and Gigak and such. So seeing what they were doing really made me want to make my own content, as I had always liked to write reviews. I think I might even have some floating around on my old Google Docs, but I had written some reviews just because I wanted to write a review. I didn't post it anywhere. I didn't have a blog or anything, just for the sake of writing it. So I had already wanted to do that, and so I started doing that. And originally I just followed the generic titles format. All my old videos, I changed the titles, but all my old videos used to have just Kor Reviews : anime, which is the worst possible title format for a video. But at that time, it seemed more normal. There were a lot of videos that would just have the title anime review, the anime title in a review. That was pretty common. Even though you see that a lot of the channels that grew around 2014, 2015 that really blossomed were those that were breaking the mold rather than copying the older format of title structure.
Yeah, I mean, because if you think about it, it makes sense. Well, this is a review and I'm reviewing this thing. Why shouldn't I just put blah reviews, blah? However, it's almost not descriptive at all. If someone's not familiar with the anime, there's no reason they're going to watch it. And why, and this is not to be insulting to anybody, but why would they care what you think? Right? Why does it matter that it's Kor Reviews? Before they've gotten a chance to know you in your review style and what you think about shows.
Exactly. No, I think that is definitely a big part when it comes to smaller channels, especially. A lot of what is limiting your growth when you're smaller, I tend to feel is just a total lack of critical thinking with regards to the like presentation of the content. It's not enough to make a video. In fact, making a good video has a lot of value, especially if you're talking about, you know, keeping videos on the video, keeping viewers on the video, which is like watch time retention is really important to how YouTube like promotes things, and also just getting shared through word of mouth, which is how, like, I feel like channels like, especially like Shabe's Caribou Coon, like he gets a lot of attention just because people like his videos and share it around. But having, especially when you're small, getting those first sort of influx of viewers, it's pretty important to realize that you can't just expect people to watch something. But it took me a while, I feel like, personally, to come into a mindset of approaching things more critically, like actually taking a second to reflect on what I was creating, because I came very much from the mindset of someone that was a writer first and foremost. I was not a video maker. I wasn't an editor. I wasn't, you know, a content creator. You know, I viewed myself as a writer, and like I would post most of my like reviews that I would post as a video. I would also post like to my blog on WordPress, and a lot of them I also posted to our anime as a like watch this post like thread back in the day, because I used to be a really like frequent active user of our anime as well.
I mean, that's almost exactly my experience, which is very insane. Because I've always considered my writing or my script the basis of my channel and what it's really about. I mean, like, if you take a look at my editing, it's I mean, I was gonna say horrible. My editing's not horrible, but it's very bare bones. It's almost entirely clip selection. Sometimes I'll throw in like a graphic that I'll put together or whatever. But I've always felt that as long as I can make my writing the best, then people will stay anyway. And then I like to think that my narration is pretty good. I spent a bunch of money on a pretty good mic. It's like the most expensive mic in the world or anything, but I think you're right. You had presentation, and really what comes down to marketing is really important, and people don't realize that. You can make the best video in the world and no one will watch it, and then what do you have? You have an unwatched video, you know?
Yeah.
And speaking of that, what I wanted to talk about really briefly is so what are your feelings on clickbait? Because taking a look at your channel, your video titles are interesting, but I don't think they ever actually fall into the realm of clickbait. Like, you know, how Kaguya-sama Love is War steps forward. That's pretty interesting and kind of asks you a question that you want to answer, but it's not really clickbait. What kind of approach do you take to naming your videos? And do you have any advice for people who are trying to do that?
So in terms of advice, personally, I've always felt rather unsure. I mean, I'm very much, I feel like I'm someone that more learns from watching other people. Like that's a big part of how I've learned to develop my videos and my presentation, and in pretty much every element. I feel like for me, a big part of it is seeing someone else do it, and then I just basically just rip them off. I mean, you know, take influence.
Yeah, take influence.
So that, I think that is really the key of it. If you're trying to figure out how to structure your titles and thumbnails and such, is just look at channels that are succeeding, that are getting noticed, especially in the realm of channels that are doing something similar to you. Because I think that's something that a lot of small channels don't recognize. Like, if you're looking for advice, or if you're looking to take influence, look for the creators that are doing something that is in the same like sort of spectrum as what you are trying to do also. Because if you just copy like generic, like if I just gave like straight up like anime man style titles and thumbnails, I don't think that would be received well, because it's not the brand I've built up and it's not the style of content that I'm making. So I think that's pretty important that both of those reflect it. But when it comes to titles, I've been more recently trying to really mix things up and make them more engaging and interesting, because I also, after I did the whole, you know, core reviews era, I moved on to the very sort of, I'd say, safe title structure for anitube videos, which is really, really common, and I feel like you see it pretty much everywhere. It's not bad, and it usually can find some success, especially if what you're talking about has some people that care about it, or it's like particularly relevant, which is essentially, point of the video or dash show title, or show title dash point of the video, essentially. That's like a really common structure, and it's something I used for a long time. However, it's not exciting. It doesn't really grab you. Like, if you don't care about the show, you're probably not going to be interested in a title with that kind of format. So I've been like trying to figure out ways to talk about things, especially when it comes to my videos that talk about more obscure things, to market them in a way that might be more appealing. So lately I've just been sort of mixing things up and trying different things to see what might catch on more than another. So I can't say that I'm too solidified in my mindset, but it does seem to be very much the best method is that which, gets you interested, like makes you curious, I think, is really the core of what a strong title and thumbnail is something that makes you have a question and want the answer to that question.
Without being overbearing, that, without saying like, you need to watch this show, because there's a good kind of curious and there's a bad kind of curious. Just to rewind a bit, you were talking about how you try to take a look at other channels that you maybe want to emulate that are doing things that you like and maybe want to incorporate it in your own work. If you don't mind, what channels and what are they doing? What's going on?
Mm-hmm. Well, I definitely think as of late, hiding in public. He's a good friend of mine, but I think his content is quite similar to the kind of thing that I am also trying to do. That's a very, I feel like it's like a strongly analytical content, and quite a few videos talking about subjects that are not necessarily super popular or really in the zeitgeist, but he's managed to, really draw people in and get them excited and get them interested in clicking on it. And I think what he's been doing with his title and thumbnail formats is not standard. Like, it's very much a shift from the norm, and I think that's part of what makes it work. So that's what I've mostly been interested in, because I think initially most of my influence when it came to video branding came primarily from Digibro, or Digine, as she is now, because her sort of mindset was, big cute anime girl, short snappy title, and it definitely works and it's rather effective, but like adding a little bit more flair is what I've been trying to do. Like, I've started learning how to use Photoshop gradually so that I could add a little bit more flair to my thumbnails.
I think your thumbnails look great, to be honest.
Oh, thank you.
They're visually striking. They're it's hard to describe. It's just I really like them.
Oh, I appreciate that. I've definitely been spending more time on them, which I think is something to note when it comes to like titles and thumbnails, because when I did videos longer ago, and I think this sort of comes back to the whole element of like, if you are like a smaller channel and you're trying to find more of an audience, like the title and the thumbnail, like you should spend some time on that. Because I used to be very, very impatient. Like, I was the kind of person that, like, I would make a video, and the second I finished that video, I was hitting the upload button. Like, I didn't even bother. I uploaded some videos at like 8 p.m. just because I could not be bothered to wait until the next day to publish them at a better time.
And what, is it just, you just like leave up the default thumbnail from like a random point in the middle of the video, or what?
I would just type the show's name into Google Images and find a solid screenshot of a character.
Uh-huh.
That was like the extent. I'd grab a screenshot, I'd throw it into GIMP, because I used to use GIMP, the greatest image software of all time, and I would increase the brightness, and the contrast, which is a good method if you're looking for something that's easy and works. Cute anime girl with a big face looking into the camera, up the brightness and contrast. You can always increase the brightness and contrast. If you look at if you look at videos that have like millions of views, a lot of them are incredibly bright. Sometimes going for the exact opposite works because it makes it stand out. But like, if you're just in between, you're not going to stand out next to another person's video.
I'm going to be a little lame. And when you said greatest image software of all time, I thought you were making a joke. But I know you were making a joke, but I thought you were making an acronym joke. And then in my head, I was like, that's not GIMP, that's GIMS. But
no, I'm just making a joke because GIMP is a terrible piece of software. It is really bad.
I used it for a while, and it's not the best.
It's really bad. It cannot do anything. You can't even make an outline on text.
Oh.
Like, that is how bad it is. You cannot. If you want to do like a drop shadow, you need to like copy it and then just paste it onto the lower layer and decrease the opacity and move it
and like line it up. Oh no!
Like the improvement in my thumbnails is like probably like 85% just because I switched to using Premiere and also got the Creative Cloud. So I started using Photoshop for the first time, and then my thumbnails started becoming like tolerable.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of took the same approach as you did in the past. I wasn't like, looking them up on Google Images to just put on reviews, but thumbnails are still today almost a second thought to me, which I know I need to change. If you take a look at my videos, they actually the thumbnails improve over time. I've been getting my friend Panda Avenger to, I was about to say Vanger again. You always get something about that. Panda Avenger to draw some, like he drew the Commando Friends and Dark Souls one. But really, I've been trying to approach the philosophy that some people will actually not read the title of your video. They'll only read the thumbnail. So you have to try to get across what the video is about from the thumbnail, or make the thumbnail interesting enough that they read the title. I think that's the delicate balance and the goal here. Yeah,
it's definitely it is a challenging game to play, and I very much understood like for myself, especially when I started putting more thought into it. It was rather frustrating because, like we were talking about, where I was saying like I always thought of myself as a writer. It's like, why am I spending any time on this? Like, I just want to make videos.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be bothered with this, but it is necessary. You have to sell people somehow, and this is just the way it rolls.
I mean, to be honest, we both talk about it like it's a chore, but it's kind of fun. I don't know. Like me, yeah. I enjoy writing. I enjoy the actual process of making the video, but trying to figure out how to get people to click on it, to get what subjects will work, what people want you to talk about. That's kind of fun in and of itself, I think.
Yeah. I think for me, and this is the case with a lot of things, when it comes to finding like pleasure in like a side of the creative process that I didn't enjoy, I think it requires like a measure of concerted effort over a period of time. So it's like initially when you're doing like something creative that is new to you, it's not fun. It's usually pretty painful. Like because you don't think about it at all before, and now you are, and you realize how bad you are, and it's not fun. But after you start like to figure it out a little bit, then it becomes more fun, and that's kind of how I feel. Like now there's like, I enjoy tinkering around in Photoshop and trying to make like a nice looking image. Like it's a fun part of the process. But it was like initially rather frustrating trying to get something to look good when I didn't have like any sort of idea of how to go about like accomplishing that.
Oh, dude, that disconnect is really, really frustrating. Like my very first video is only 3 minutes long, and a lot of that, and I probably like 4 to 6 hours editing it. because I had no idea what to do. This is my first time using any kind of editing equipment whatsoever, and I spent a disproportionate amount of time trying to do this fancy thing where because the whole idea I had was that the video's on Diana Cavendish, and it's about how she has two different persons of two different sides of her. So I wanted to show her and then like make her split and then separate into two. And I spent so long trying to figure out how to do that, and I ended up not being able to do it. So all I did was I just did a crossfade into her being two people, which worked just fine. But it certainly is frustrating trying to do something, seeing what you want in your head, but not being able to get to that goal.
Yeah. And then there's I feel like there's like a point where things start to click and you're like, oh, like I get it. I sort of get it now. And that's really satisfying.
So taking a look at your channel, you kind of have an interesting mix of, how do I say this? I mean, kind of the old and new, but not really. It's mostly everything that you're interested in, I suppose. So you have a video about Kaguya-sama, but you also have a video about Azuki-chan, which apparently I can't even watch. You have a video about the strangest anime romance with a telephone pole. And then you also have a video about Kakushigota, which is a seasonal that just ended recently. Do you have any kind of rhyme or reason when choosing video topics? I know some people, I believe, well, no, not Shapes. Shapes told me that he tries to pick up smaller projects that people can kind of focus on while he's working on the bigger project. And I used to do that myself. But I actually found out that, my experience, the smaller projects were a lot more popular than the bigger projects. So I just started doing whatever. But do you purposely kind of go out of your way to make these kind of seasonal anime videos in order to support your other content? Or are they truly something that you will, wanted to make in the first place?
So I would say it's definitely a mix of both, because like, this is I'd say part of the mindset of some people that are a little bit more cynical about the YouTube game is, and sometimes I do feel this way myself. It's like, I know I can talk about pretty much any seasonal and I'll be guaranteed a certain amount of views. And it is like, oh yeah, like, but part of it does come from like a genuine interest and excitement. Like, I sincerely enjoy watching anime and talking about anime from every era. And I think every different like time period has its own point of interest. And it was probably like there was a period in time where I got really burnt out on anime, and I basically stopped watching anime. Like, I only watched like a couple anime over the course of like an entire year. And when I got back into it, what sort of helped me stay interested was continually watching from like every different time period, like just jumping back and forth. And that has helped me sort of maintain my interest and excitement for the medium. And so that's sort of like an extension of that is like the content I create, because everything I talk about like is something like I was excited to watch and wanted to see. But that's not to say that I don't, pick and choose what I talk about when I think it might have some success. So generally speaking, my current principle that I've been working with for the past few months is trying to alternate between a video on a more well-established subject that I think has more potential to do well, and a video on something that is more obscure and lesser known that I want to highlight. Because for me, a big part of my channel and what I enjoy doing is the element of curation, of sharing experiences that, people haven't seen before. And I don't think being a curator has much value if you don't have an audience that you are sharing your curation with.
Definitely.
So I do value like the trying to maintain some growth and upwards momentum.
How have you been having growth and upward momentum? I mean, you deserve it. But how have you kind of reacted to and or felt about your channel's popularity and growth over time?
I'm in like the middle of the road on it. I've definitely been having some pretty solid growth.
7K is pretty good.
Yeah. And I've been uploading weekly lately. So that's also been probably helping, I imagine. A big part of my growth has come from, for those that don't know, I work as a video editor professionally for other YouTube channels, and one of the channels I edit for, one of the big channels I edit for, Nuxtaku, has given me a couple shout outs, and so a pretty big portion of it has come from those shout outs, as he's like a channel with over 1 million subscribers, which it does give you the kind of like, I don't know how to describe it, like the feeling of like, oh, I didn't earn this, but like,
I mean,
who earns
they gotta
anything?
stay, they gotta choose to hit the button. So
yeah. It's like just take what you can and keep working is the kind of mindset I try and have with it. So I feel like I've been on the cusp of some healthy growth, since in terms of my like channel, it has been a while since I've had a video like that's actually really grown outside of my base. I've sort of been, I feel like I've been in the same sort of box for a decent while. There hasn't been a video that's like surpassed my like channel subscriber count in a while, but my goal is essentially to keep experimenting and stay consistent, and hopefully get out of that box soon enough.
Are you actively trying to look for that video? Like you're like, maybe this will be the one, or are you just trying to make what you make, and then maybe one day one of them will be that video?
Well, I am trying to maintain it. Like I'm trying to make a concerted effort to, produce content to make like each video something that I think like when I see it, like I'm like, I could imagine this having a lot of views, like trying to do something like that. And not to say that there aren't some videos that I make that are purely like passion projects, like my video where I talk about the film My Miracle, which is a film directed by Sunao Katabuchi, who directed In This Corner of the World. It's just a film that I really, really appreciate, and I wanted to talk about, and I genuinely could not think of a way that to brand it in a way that I thought would succeed. Like I couldn't think of a way to sell it, essentially, but I still ended up making it just because I really wanted to, and the film spoke to me a lot. So it's like trying to keep a healthy mix of like talking about things that I'm passionate about and things that I think might succeed. Because for me personally, I know some people struggle with ideas or knowing what to do next, and I definitely feel that at times. There's some points where I think you're like, man, I just don't have any passion for anything in particular. But when it comes to the grand scheme of things, there's easily over 100 different like ideas that I would like to talk about at some point in the future. So it's never a question of like whether or not, it's more a question of like what do I feel like doing next, or what is like the most valuable thing for me to do next, because I have an endless assortment of things that I all would somewhat equally love to talk about.
See, I definitely have this kind of crippling fear that one day I'm just going to run out of things to talk about, because I don't know, to me it's just so up to creativity. Creativity is kind of this, I mentioned in another video of mine, I call it a fickle mistress that kind of just comes and goes as she pleases. I don't know about you, I do have like a notepad document of just different video ideas and whatsoever. And I don't know, I just feel that sometimes they're bad ideas. Sometimes I'm in the middle of making a video and then I'll be almost done and I'll be, does this actually make sense? Like, should I be making this? And then almost always I'll always put it out, and then people always say, oh, this is a great video, blah blah blah. So it is irrational. But I certainly empathize with that.
No, I certainly feel that. I mean, there's those times where I'll have my big document of like ideas and I'll be scrolling through and I'm like, I just cannot get excited over any of these, and I think that's just a part of doing something creative is there's just points where you really kind of reach a low point. And I think it's just all about finding ways to like reinvigorate that excitement, whatever it is. Sometimes for me, it can be as simple as forcing myself to sit down and watch an anime that I know I will like. But there's those times where you're like, man, I just can't get motivated to watch anything. But then you actually force yourself to sit down and watch something that you know you'll like and you love it and you're really excited. And then like that sometimes helps me sort of reinvigorate my creativity. It varies pretty wildly.
It's so weird because you would think that it wouldn't be that hard, right? Hey, you like this show? Yeah, come on, brain, you weirdo.
No, exactly.
But it really is like that a lot of the time.
That endless. I've got such a lengthy list of shows that I've put on hold that I really want to get back to, but one day.
One day. All right. This is a little far in to do, but how about you take us through your video making process, like from beginning to end, from idea conception to clicking publish on YouTube? How does it go?
So starting off with the idea. It can sometimes come in. Occasionally, I will have a vague idea before I even watch an anime. There's sometimes where I will see a show and I will just like get that feeling that if I watch this, I will have something to say about it. I feel like that's something like once you've seen a lot of anime, you have like a sort of sense for things that you will enjoy and that you will find interesting. Just looking at a lot of the sort of like aesthetic elements and just vague like descriptions and other things, the way things are presented, you can get pretty easily get an idea for something that might resonate with you. Whereas other times it might be an anime that I've seen before and I, am revisiting. That's a fair amount. Or like it's either part of that or it's part of my process of exploring anime that are super obscure, and those are more sort of like I basically search until I find something that I think I can talk about. So the approach varies a lot. This is such a long lead up, but the approach varies a lot depending on what kind of video I'm doing. Because like my approach for like my every anime reviewed series, which is like the first step of that process is making a huge documents file list of every single show that came out that year, then traversing through Nya and like any sort of like video like uploading sites I can find to find which anime are actually available to watch and which ones are subtitled and organizing that. That's like the first step for that. Whereas with other things, it's much less involved. But once I get the idea and I consume the anime or whatever, usually, if it's something that I've watched for the first time, or even if it's a rewatch, I usually spend at least a day before I write the script. Because for me, the script writing process, I think it varies depending on the individual. For me personally, most of my videos aren't very research-based. I am interested in doing some stuff more along that line in the future, but for the most part, a lot of my content is more directly taking from everything that is in the subject. So I don't...
It's like your subjective experience of whatever's happening.
Not even necessarily subjective, but mostly it's just based off of the like qualities of the piece unto itself. I'm not really talking about things outside of that most of the time. So I like to... So the writing process doesn't take much time because I'm not doing a lot of research. And I'm a pretty fast writer, I'd say. Having been writing for a very long time, the process is like it's like a slower extension of how I talk, like regularly, is how I feel like with it. So most of the time when I sit down to write something, I usually already have a lot of the like I'll have like probably my opening line and a lot of like sort of lines here and there. And I'll have like the main point and ideas that I want to cover. And so I can just sit down and in one session, like in a couple hours, get the entire script finished. And then usually I'll go back through and make some minor adjustments for like grammatical errors and things in that vein. or maybe I might organize
So
things.
you almost never return to a script. It's always sit down and from start to finish, just in one sitting.
Yeah, it's pretty rare that I do any kind of major revisions, because when I sit down to write a script, that is like when I have decided that I am like putting it together. I guess I would describe it as like I'm mostly like sort of figure out the script in my mind before I write it.
Okay, so you already have, say, a middle, a beginning, and an end.
Yeah, I already know what I'm essentially going to get at. So the process is more of like putting that into like specific words and putting that down onto paper. So it's more sort of immediate, and I feel like I've really sort of I've figured out the process to a point where it's pretty like inherent, because I've been doing it for so long. So that's the general mindset. It varies. For some videos, they might take a little bit more thought, or the script writing process might take a little longer, especially for any videos where I'm trying to integrate comedy. Anytime I try and use humor, that takes me a very long time, because I'm not very confident in my humor, but I do like think incorporating it more is like important to making a video more enjoyable. So that tends to take me more time because I'm less confident in it. Whereas when it comes to things that are more analytical, I'm pretty confident in my ability to like analyze something.
All right, cool. Just to briefly comment about my own process, I pretty much, I'm beginning to think that we are much more similar than I thought. Just because I'm very much in the same way in that all of my scripts have to be done from beginning to end in pretty much one sitting.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of been changing over time, but the way I approach a script is I have a general idea of what I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, most of the time it's directly made off of notes that I've made during the show. Mm-hmm. So I'll make notes, and then the thing about my notes is that they kind of suck. Like, they're not actual notes. They're just kind of like any kind of witty one-liner that comes to me during the show. And sometimes I just phrase things that could be in a script that I think just really sounds really pretty. Mm-hmm. And then the script is about me trying to incorporate these pretty sounding lines in a way that sounds natural and flows. So if you take a look here, these are my notes on book or bookworm. I keep forgetting that people don't actually call it book. So when I talk to people, I say, "Oh, I've been watching Book," and they're like, "What the hell is Book?"
Book, my favorite show.
Yeah, right. But my notes are: she describes why she likes them. Episode 5, love of history, industrious, creative, crafty. Like they're kind of almost useless. I don't know, because like we know that mine is supposed to have a love of history. You know what I mean? But if anything, my notes are kind of little jumping off points for not the entire essay, but just even sentences, paragraphs, and ideas. And after that, what I do is I just rewrite it endlessly until I'm okay with it. Because unlike you, I often don't know exactly what the final script is going to look like in my head. In the past, I used to write outlines, but nowadays I just kind of write and then hope it takes me somewhere that's generally good. And then after I have something I'm all right with, I just literally open up a new document. I put draft on the end of the old document's title, and I just look at it and I rewrite it. And then if anything better wording wise comes to me, I'll incorporate it. If I think that a certain section is a little too bad, I'll try to rewrite it and rework it. I'll get other people to look at it. So it really is kind of like an iterative process for me.
I think it, I mean, when it comes to like taking notes, that's something that I do for some videos, but not every video. I think it depends on what kind of video it is. For instance, like my Shimeji simulation video, I took a lot of notes for that video as I was rereading the manga, just because it's very intricate and there's a lot of different ideas. So it took a lot of time to figure out, like, I was like, how do I put together all these different like things that I want to like remember, that it's like talking about, and sort of format them, and structure them, like everything that I want to touch on. Whereas with some videos, it's much more straightforward, where I'm essentially doing a sort of like review where I essentially just try and show you the appeal of the anime and maybe talk a little bit about what it's like saying, but it's not quite as, deep, I guess, quote unquote.
And I certainly have those myself. I mean, like you mentioned way back before earlier, you used to write a lot of watch this, which is a tag on our anime where you can write a recommendation of at least 1,500 characters, and it's supposed to be this kind of enticement to watch whatever. I used to write. I still write a whole bunch of those, and even some of them I end up turning into video scripts. It's just that I don't like making a kind of generic review in particular, so I tend to just stick them to Reddit. But to pivot a little bit, the way that you and I met was that, and this is just my first memory of you interacting on my channel, was that I had put out my Iyashike video, and I remember you leaving a comment talking about, hey, this is a great video, I really like how you incorporate sources, blah, blah, blah. And since then, we've, I don't know. I don't know what's wrong in my brain with wording today, but I was about to say our friendship has blossomed. That's just weird. I'm sorry. But what I'm trying to get at is that we are now in a server that is chock full of other small anitubers. It's run by Urban, but now you and Jack have a big hand in it as well. And you do a lot of collaboration. You actually did something very similar to this podcast called the Anitube Interview, which is great. You interviewed Subtitled and Mathwiz, which you should go watch on Kor's channel. And you do stuff like bring on people for the other sections in every anime reviewed in whatever year. What is kind of your take when it comes to collaboration and how to make the most of it?
So I mean, for me, collaboration has always been something I am really excited about. As like someone that's a very like creatively minded individual, one of my favorite parts about being creative is getting to do it with other people. That's always been like some of the most like satisfying moments. Like when I used to do music more frequently, my favorite moments were playing music like in a group setting, and there's just a certain sort of experience that and connection that you get from making something with someone else that is incredibly satisfying and like nothing else. So getting involved in the community, it really felt like it was kind of par for the course that I would want to, start doing things with other people. And I think in terms of collaboration, it's really good and helpful for, helping people like sort of direct audiences and sort of build this community of people that are, following a lot of a sort of tight-knit group of really quality creators. Because I feel like like for instance with like doing like Twitch live streams, there's a very more like direct way of creators to interact with each other, but with videos it's a lot harder, especially in the analytical field, which I think is the most challenging aspect of doing collaborative projects. But I might be wrong, but I think one of the earliest I had done a podcast way back that you were on where I talked about old anime, because that was right around when I started watching Shabe's Caribou-kun, and I was starting to get really interested in old anime. So I started watching more, and I sort of made the podcast as an extension of that. And then
that's the Natsukashi podcast, by the way, and I came up with that name, by the way.
It's a dead podcast, as every podcast I do seems to end up. But that was a lot of fun. Just getting to interact with all these people that I had been, watching but never really talked to before, and then I was a part of. I can't remember. It was the Iza Takahata episode of Anituber Anthology, which is
Mr. Nice Guy.
Yeah, Mr. Nice Guy runs that, and that was a lot of fun to be a part of. So I've always enjoyed, like, whenever I can contribute, it's fun. It feels like I'm giving something back, and I always enjoy having other people on, and I think it promotes like a healthy kind of like like inspiration and desire to improve. At least for me, like doing my series Every Anime Reviewed, which is if you don't know, on my channel, we did a series. It's 4 parts. We reviewed every single anime that came out in the year 1989, and each season that we covered, I had different guests on, and like I intentionally brought on a lot of channels that I like really took a lot of sort of like inspiration from, or really like felt like their content had a lot that I could take influence from. And so seeing their work in it motivated me to really try and improve my own content. So I think that's like a big part of why collaboration has a lot of value, is, you know, this sort of back and forth of inspiration and motivation and sort of challenging each other.
Yeah, I really never thought about it that way when you talked about live streaming, because when you live stream, you can literally be on each other's streams, like play a game at the same time, or you can host each other. So viewers who you think like viewers who come to your channel and you're not there, you can host a channel that you think they'll enjoy, and then they can watch that. Part of the inspiration of this podcast specifically is from Check the Wire, which is a podcast run from by Dan Giesling of Big Brother fame, and Northern Lion, who is a kind of a bigger YouTuber / Twitch streamer. And I never thought about it. So the reason why I watch Northern Lion so much is because his streams always have the same rotating cast of his friends. And over time, you really get invested in their interactions, and then as a result, their content. So I pretty much watch everybody that has come onto NL's show. And I figure in Anitube, I mean, it's going to be hard because, again, like you said, videos are inherently different to streaming. But it'd be really cool to have this kind of separate ecosystem where there's kind of the same people that you see again and again.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I mean, that's something I really like value, and I think would be cool to have, because it was something that like got that really in my mind, was because I've been streaming more frequently lately over the past few months or so, and one of my streams, like Hiding, who has been streaming a lot lately, he does really good streams, but he's found a lot of success in that, and he rated me. And a lot of his viewers were like, you know, who are you? Or like, what's your connection? Like, how did I think someone, it was specifically a comment like, how did Hiding find this guy? And I was like, to me, it's like, it was really, really interesting, because I'm like, this is a guy that I've known to and talked to like really regularly for, I guess, like well over a year. So to me, like, the connection is really, really clear. But if you're looking as a like outside viewer, it's that sort of connection isn't really apparent. So it's like sort of fostering that communal aspect is, I think, a lot of fun. And it's not to say that I think everybody needs to participate. Like, something that I find rather frustrating is when you're trying to do like more like group-based activities, but there's clearly someone that's not really excited about it. So I want to work with the people that are like sincerely, you know, excited about and enjoy doing the collaborative stuff. And try and make it fun for everyone, because that is always, for me, I always feel really bad when I ask people to collaborate on things for like my channel, because I'm like, oh, but it's like, you know, it's for me. Like, this feels really selfish. I'm asking them to put in all this effort for something that's not even for themselves. So it's like, I want it to be like as fun an experience as possible for all parties.
Yeah, and that energy can be really infectious and improve everybody. So I totally get where you're coming from. So, speaking of collaboration, you have made a new channel. I mean, it's not exactly new now, but it's called Jack and Kor. Subscribe to Jack and Kor, by the way.
Yes, subscribe to Jack and Kor.
It's your channel with Jack's Boy, who is another Anituber, whose content is actually really different than what we make. It's a satire, comedy, sometimes analytical. It's very hard to describe, actually. Mm-hmm. But now that you've recently started Jack and Kor, how's it going? I mean, it sounds like you're having a lot of fun. It's
really been a blast. So I started Jack and Kor, like, it came out of a desire to do that kind of collaborative thing that I've talked about. Like, I really wanted to make it more like do something collaborative that was much more frequent. And Jack is someone that I've talked to a lot, and I would consider a really close friend. And I feel like we have a very like I can talk to Jack really easily and joke with Jack really easily. So I just felt that sort of connection. And he is also someone that I got that sort of, excitement and interest in doing fun group projects. Like, me and him played a big part in making not one, but two big joke albums that featured our sort of group of friends at the time.
Watch Facebook.
Yes, indeed. So we both had that sort of enjoyment of just like taking an idea and rolling with it and making it a reality. So I'd always wanted to do some sort of like fun, jokey kind of podcast, because I feel like though I've been trying to integrate comedy more, I still don't really have a very comedic persona. It's not really my style, and it's not really what comes naturally. Even though I really enjoy more comedically focused content, I feel I work better with it in the context of building off of someone else. Mm-hmm. So doing it with Jack, who is an extremely jokey individual, whereas, my persona is a more serious one, I felt like it.
Yeah, if you're going to choose anybody, Jack was a good choice.
Yeah, the dynamic sells itself really well, and we're both very excited and want to, put a lot of effort into growing it. And I've been really happy with the positive reception. Like, it's been like much more than I could have possibly expected. Like, people have really seemed to be enjoying what we're doing, which, if it is not clear, Jack and Kor, we do, like, currently we're doing a series, like a Disney Cast, which is a series of podcasts where we talk about every single Disney animated film in chronological order. And then we also do, which is the sort of more bread and butter, is a series where we talked about Ascendance of Bookworm, and we're currently doing Isekai Smartphone, where we watched the whole show and sort of riffed on it and joked about it, and edited our reactions down into, smaller, more concise, just the sort of highlights and best moments.
Yeah, I really like it. It's almost reminiscent of days past where you would have episode reviewers. And I mean, you still have episode reviewers today, but it's kind of just like the highlights of watching an entire show and what comes up, Now, do you ever run into any trouble with, because I know Jack, like, again, Jack's content is very kind of satirical, and you can't really tell when he's being serious or not. So he gets a lot of comments that are kind of being offended at something he said that he may or may not actually mean. But Ascendance of a Bookworm, I mean, the title of the series is Ascendance of a Bookworm Sucks. And for smartphones, Isekai Smartphone is the worst anime ever made. Do you ever run into any trouble with, like, I know Smartphone is not exactly well looked upon, but people really like Bookworm. Do you ever run into any trouble with people that kind of get really offended at where you're coming from and are unable to laugh at the show and themselves?
So surprisingly, well, there's been a mix of two things. On one front, I think the negative pushback will probably come at some point. However, because we're still, a pretty small channel, most of the channel's audience and viewer base is coming directly from me and Jack. So, like, most of the people that are watching it already have some sense for us as creators and probably have sort of similar tastes to us to some extent, and are probably going to be more forgiving even if they do like the show, because they, it's all in good fun. However, there have been, like, a lot of comments that have been like, I like this show, but, like, your reactions are funny. Like, it's still, like, enjoyable. And that kind of stuff is, like, what makes me really happy, is when, it, like, no hard feelings, kind of, like, you can enjoy us, like, joking about it and enjoy our sort of reactions and still, stay strong in your own sort of opinions and perspective on the show.
And that's the camp I'm in, so yeah, I totally agree. It is, regardless of what you think about the show, it's just fun to watch them absolutely lose their minds.
I mean, we've gotten a couple comments in that vein, but fortunately, it's still pretty small. So, and I'll just, I let myself get into the trap of arguing, but generally I try and avoid responding to any sort of comments that are, or rather just not giving a serious response to comments that I find just are generally in bad faith or not really looking for any sort of real discussion.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to handle it. All right. Well, we're almost to an hour now. So I think we should start wrapping up. Thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed having you here, and it was a really fun conversation.
No, thank you. Yeah. I enjoyed it a lot.
Is there anything else you wanted to leave off on? Maybe you could either pimp your channel, give advice, talk about anything really.
Man, you're really putting me on the spot with this one, aren't you? I guess all I can really say in the end is subscribe to Jack and Kor.
Subscribe to Jack and Kor. Well, there you have it. Thank you all for so much for taking a listen. I got a lot of good feedback and a lot of praise really for the first episode. So I'm really excited to keep doing this, and I hope to be able to talk to a bunch of more people soon. Once again, thanks to Kor for showing up, and I hope you all have a great day. Goodbye.
Bye.
And of course, if anything I said was wrong, I'm sorry. I must have stuttered.